Now, great. Today is March 2nd, 2021. I'm Dr. Soldier, and I am interviewing Arthur Muhammad as part of the African American Oral History Project. Brother Muhammad, can you state your name, please, for our recording?
Yes, my name is Brother Arthur Muhammad.
And where did you grow up?
Born and raised in Mount Vernon, New York, a town nestled right outside of New York City. That's only 4 square miles, but is known for so much.
And who did you grow up with?
I grew up with loads of friends. Mount Vernon being a small town geographically, having tens of thousands of residents in that small 4 square miles. There was a lot of interaction with the same group of people in Little League and tackle football and summer camp. And then as days grew in the early days of hip hop in the 70s, so I grew up with the community.
And what schools did you attend in Mount Vernon?
So I attended Longfellow Elementary School from my K-8, K-6 experience. And then my parents sent me to a Lutheran school called Emmanuel Lutheran for my 7th and 8th grade. And just when I thought I was going to go to the famed Mount Vernon High School, my parents had other thoughts and they sent me to Salesian High School in New Rochelle, which if we get a chance, I definitely like to talk about that experience. But it was an all white school where we had 12 Black people. So I went from all Black Mount Vernon that was 99% Black in the school system to a Catholic school that was 98% Caucasian, and graduated from there in 1983. And in 1987, I graduated from Iona College in New Rochelle. And quite recently, 30 plus years later, I'm in the conferral stage waiting for my transcripts and ultimately my diploma with the American College of Education, getting my master's in education.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
So what was your neighborhood like in Mount Vernon? What are some of your, I'd say, fond memories growing up there?
Definitely my fond memories was playing sports. Sports is the national pastime of Mount Vernon, particularly basketball. But even before I got my love for basketball, in those days, in the early to mid 70s, children still played at home. They played in the front yard. Neighbors were neighbors. So playing games like tag, hide and go seek, a dodgeball, we never got tired of it. We did it every day. And when it rained, we were on somebody's porch playing cards. That was how I grew up. We grew up being physical. And obviously, with the advent of the digital age and, gaming and ultimately cell phones that do everything, that part is missed from Mount Vernon. So literally, you can walk down the street on a nice spring day where you would expect to see hundreds of people out in the park and walking, and literally they're on their cell phone conversing or on the World Wide Web or somewhere on social media. And this has also contributed to the gross childhood obesity that exists in the Black community.
Absolutely. And do you have any memories or did you attend church or places of worship in Mount Vernon?
Yes, I am a Muslim. However, my family was Christian, and so I grew up Christian. And the church that I attended was Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, New York, which is the largest church. Right now is headed up by Pastor W. Franklin Richardson. And and then in 1987, 1988, I converted to Islam. And I attend Muhammad Mosque number 7 in Harlem, which is a very storied mosque. For that is the mosque that Malcolm X was the minister over in the 60s. That's the same mosque that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was over in the 70s. And we've had great luminaries like Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Benjamin Chavis, Conrad Muhammad, and the late great minister Abdul Hafiz Muhammad. And in fact, I assisted him for many years up until his demise from the COVID-19 coronavirus. And now I sit as the student assistant minister in charge of affairs until further notice.
And would you be able to share a bit more about your choice for conversion to Islam?
Absolutely. I questioned the Christian teachings at a very early age. I questioned the narratives, like, when it's raining, the angels are crying. I questioned how could Moses take hundreds of thousands of people over the breadth of the Red Sea, and with goods and with their household belongings. Like, I had questions, theological questions, and the answers that I received back was, boy, just believe. Don't question God. Don't question the Bible. And the more I was told that by my parents, in my mind, being this Black boy going to this all-white school, not understanding the racial difference and the racial divide. And so when I began to hear Minister Farrakhan speak for the legitimate aspirations of people and speak pride and speak honor and speak strength with excellence and defeat some of the greatest minds in the newscaster business that would invite him to be on his shows, I initially embraced the nationalistic theme that I was hearing and that I was desiring. For I did not want righteousness. I did not want religion. I just wanted to represent my people from a nationalistic perspective, my love of Black history. However, as I began to listen to an array of his messages, I began to hear his spiritual breakdown. And again, by going to a Lutheran school, growing up Christian or Baptist, also growing up in a situation where I went to the Catholic high school and the Catholic college, I had a foundation of the scriptures. And he began in his exegesis to answer those questions that I had a deep yearning for, to get the meaning of. And he gave the best answers to the questions that I had when I was young, asking my parents, asking my pastor. And so I began to rely on his scholarship. And after a while, after weaning myself from bad habits, social deviance, I decided at the age of 23 to surrender my life to Allah. And for me, it is the best thing that I ever did, because of that, everything that I have, everything that I'm attached to, I could trace it back to my decision.
Absolutely. So I know you're really involved with the mosque, but is there anything else that you enjoy doing in your spare time outside of all the community work that you do?
Yes, man, that's a very good question, because sometimes people don't realize that those of us who go under the title activists are human beings, and they think that we eat, revolutionary cookies, and we drink liberation milk. You know what I'm saying? So I have a few things that I like to do. I am a DJ. I an accomplished professional DJ. In fact, I was blessed to graduate three of my daughters through college through the art of DJing, because, again, growing up in Mount Vernon, born in 1965, hip hop started in 75, 76. So I grew up off of hip hop. And so I DJ all around the tri-state. They fly me into Chicago, to Detroit, to Atlanta, to do gigs, but obviously during this COVID season, it slowed down considerably. I also have a fetish for koi fish. I love Japanese koi fish. In fact, so much so that I built two outdoor ponds in my backyard, and they are full of koi fish. And then probably um, my greatest love, my greatest joy is farming, gardening. I am an avid gardener. Matter of fact, before I tuned in for this interview, I was turning over the horse manure that I had collected earlier this January, so that it can break down. I had to water it so it could break down into fertilizer by the time that I'm ready to put my plants in the ground. I have a small greenhouse. I compost. I am absolutely love gardening. In fact, I have built a community garden at the Mount Vernon Public Library this summer. I'm going to do a project with my young men who I mentor and my brother's keeper. We're going to do a community project, garden project with the Mount Vernon Neighborhood Health Center, because we have a great degree of food insecurity in our community, and COVID exposed our food insecurity. And when the aisles and the shelves were barren and people had no food, growing your own food is important. And knowing that you don't need large tracts of land, all you need is a pot, all you need is a planter, all you need is a old tire, that you can fill with soil and learn, and it's a beautiful thing.
And I know we said we return to this a bit more, but can you tell us a bit more about your experience with racial discrimination or prejudice, especially in high school, but at any other point in your life?
Well, I I got my first touch of racism at high school, New Rochelle. Remember, let's just do a little quick timeline. 1865, slavery ended, or the slaves were emancipated. I'm born in 1965, which is 100 years later. 1965 is also the year that much of the civil rights legislation was introduced. So now I'm going to high school in 1979. So much of the biases, much of the institutionalized, not just the covert, but the overt racism still existed. And that was part of America's culture. And, I was called a racial slur by a Caucasian boy, and that was my first knockout. I knocked him out, and I was unapologetically proud of it because I was instilled with Black pride. However, I had an epiphany at that school. I shared with you that the school had only 12 Black people, and all 12 of us was on some one sports team or another. Most of the 12 had poor grades, and I was dancing in between B's and C's, though I was an A student throughout my junior high school and elementary experience. And I realized that the Caucasian people expected Blacks to excel athletically, but did not have great expectations for us academically. And so I decided in my mind that I would compete with them without calling a challenge. But I said I was going to compete with them academically. And I wanted to prove to myself that Black people are just as or more intelligent. And from that moment, my study habits, my preparation, my will, my determination about getting good grades using the spirit of competition as the catalyst, I graduated third out of my senior class. And that experience allowed me it confirmed in my soul that anything that I put my mind to, and I don't care who is it against, I will be successful if I follow that same template of determination, of preparation, of organization.
And all of these characteristics you talk about, you've done so much work in the community, both in Mount Vernon, but in Yonkers and in Westchester County. Are you able to talk a bit more about your activism and your community work, both in Mount Vernon, but also greater Westchester County?
Yes, ma'am. You know, being a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he teaches us that whenever you are a minister in a particular city, I did not send you to be the minister of the mosque or the assistant minister of the mosque. I send you to be the minister of the city. So part of my ministry is outreaching to grassroots organizations. So anytime an organization is doing a worthy effort, I don't have to speak. I just want to be there as part of the effort. And then when they realize who I am, they'll give me a speaking opportunity. I love mentoring so much. And for example, there was a student today at the school district who's working remotely, and he was having a difficult time logging on. Therefore, he was not able to get credits for his schoolwork. He was a young man who I had mentored in junior high school, and his mother called me because when I mentor in young men, I always get parental consent, and she remembered. And so I, on my lunchtime, went over his house with a gentleman from the IT department, and we got him hooked up online, got his teacher on the phone. The teacher walked him through how to navigate through the system and what was needed to do. And that filled my soul. Like I was so happy to know that his mother could call me and that I could bring somebody who sacrificed their lunchtime to help this person out. And so if it's organizing a rally on an issue, I definitely vibrate off of the black on black violence that exists in Mount Vernon, in Yonkers. So many times I will organize a peace rally. I absolutely abhor the reckless habit of trash in our community. So from time to time, I'll organize neighborhood cleanups and ask for volunteers. As I said, building community gardens, and then also, offering security. Sometimes at some of the blighted neighborhoods, where the elders and the women feel very nervous, I'll come out there with a crew of brothers, and we'll patrol the area for a while. And again, it fills my soul just to serve our people. So I look at myself as more as a servant than an activist.
And connected to sort of service, are you able to talk a bit more about your involvement with Black Lives Matter and its impact on Mount Vernon specifically?
Well, the Black Lives Matter, the organization, I don't necessarily not support. I definitely support their aims, but I don't that's not necessarily my philosophy. But Black Lives Matter, the theme, Black Lives Matter, in actuality, I 100% stand for. I think that the Black Lives Matter organization, they have a philosophy, they have a funding source, they have a way of doing things, but the theme, Black Lives Matter, the mantra resonates all Black people, no matter what their ideological persuasion is. And so, you know, in response to Black Lives Matter, you will hear Caucasians say all lives matter, or you'll hear police say blue lives matter. And that is true, for all life does matter. However, we know in America when they said with freedom and justice for all. It was like saying all lives matter, but they operated centuries and centuries with us not getting freedom and justice. So our afflictions caused us to start a Black liberation movement. Our afflictions from our historical enemies, the Caucasians, caused us to start a civil rights movement. We never received the dignity, the justice, the equality that we were ensured. In fact, we're coming up on the history of the 3/5 compromise, or the 3/5 clause that's in the Constitution, that guaranteed those slave owners to count their Black slaves as 3/5 of a freed person, reducing us to 60%. See, so this is why we chant Black Lives Matter. See, you can amend a law, but you don't necessarily amend the hearts and minds of people that hold these stronghold biases.
Absolutely. My final question is, what does Black History Month mean to you? And are there any figures that either resonate with you or ways that you commemorate them in your daily life?
Well, Black History Month to me is a starter for a person's journey. In fact, I don't recommend people go to college to be Black history majors unless they're going to be professors, because Black history is something that we should be nurtured on, and it's a lifelong journey. I don't like the way Black History Month is reduced to the accomplishments of freed slaves in America. In fact, Black History Month, when you pigeonhole it to history figurines of Blacks in America, oftentimes they highlight athletes, they highlight entertainers, and this one sold more records than this one, and that's Black history. When you talk about Black history, you have to go back to God Himself. For if God made man in His image and after His likeness, and we know that Black is original, because when two Caucasians mate, they cannot make anything other than white. When two Caucasians mate, they can't make Black, they can't make brown, they can't make yellow, and they can't make red. And so if the Caucasian was the first here, then we wouldn't be here, because they can't make anything but themselves. So if God made man in His image and after His likeness, and we're Black, and we were first, then that means He was Black. That means that all of the prophets were Black, including Jesus. And so when we have to go to Imhotep in Egypt, we have to go to Mansa Musa. You know, there are so many people that contributed. And the last thing is, when they do talk about people who fought for rights, they go for people who fought for civil rights. So very rarely when you look at the Ford Foundation, or you look at McDonald's, who has these, posters of commemorating Black history, where's the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? Where's the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey? Where's Denmark Vesey? Where's Noble Drew Ali? Where's Nat Turner? Where's the Black Panthers? Where are the people that struggled and yearned to be free, that wanted to organize our people, and in some cases separate from our historical enemies? So it's almost as if our historical enemies putting on the mask of civility is spoon feeding us very safe people to commemorate, and not people that would stir up, um, conjure up the real thoughts. So, for instance, they're changing some of the history books and say things like this: Blacks came to America from Africa to be agriculturalists. And so the watering down of history has made even some Black people say, oh, that was the past. But to our Jewish family, as a proud Jewish person, they hold on to this sentiment, never forget. And I don't blame them. We should never forget human suffering, and we as Black people should never feel ashamed of putting a light on our history, not to blame someone, but to learn from it so it can be a launching pad to greatness in doubling and tripling the work that our people did, for instance, in Black Wall Street.
Thank you so much, Brother Muhammad. That's it for my questions, but I do want to turn over to you if there's anything that you'd like to share with our audience about your experience, your journey, or your service to your community.
Well, I would like to say this. I think that what you're doing is very honorable. I don't think that we as Black people commemorate or memorialize our struggle and our story. And oftentimes the oral tradition stops at one generation or maybe two. But to archive, memorialize this will outlive both of us, including our children's children, and to have organic uh, um, accounts of real life history, putting the pieces together, a person can tell a more accurate story than from an author that maybe have a biased spin to how life was, or just a limited spin. You know, it was John Legend that sang the song Ordinary People. You're organizing and interviewing ordinary people to make an extraordinary story. So I salute you, Sister Kishana.
Thank you, Brother Muhammad, for sharing your story and for giving us an archive to share with generations to come.
Yes, ma'am.